Have you ever looked at someone and realized your love was an expensive mistake? I have. My husband, the man I sacrificed everything to lift up, told me I was just average. He did not know that average was the perfect camouflage. And when the curtain falls, I will be standing on the cover of the magazine he covets, a summit he will never reach. My name is Eliza. I am 35. For the past decade, I have lived in Austin, Texas, working as an interior designer. My talent is quiet, often overshadowed by the modesty my clients at Oak and Hearth Interiors prefer. It is a small, respectable firm. We specialize in comfortable, unchallenging spaces. Today, I won something. The Austin Municipal Design Award. It was for a small commercial space I redesigned downtown, a sliver of innovation in an otherwise beige portfolio. The award itself was a modest piece of acrylic, but it felt heavy in my hands. It felt like a promise. I wanted to celebrate. I spent 3 hours preparing the duck confit, the one Marcus swears is better than any restaurant's. A bottle of French wine, one we had saved for 5 years, was breathing on the kitchen island. The table was set. The candles were new. At 7, I straightened my dress. At 8, I checked my phone. At 9, the candles had burned halfway down, their wax pooling on the holders. By 10, the confit was dry. The wine's aroma had faded. The silence of the large, minimalist house we lived in was suffocating. He came home at 11:15. I heard the familiar, heavy click of the front door, the sharp toss of his keys onto the glass console table. He did not call my name. He never did anymore. I found him in his study, the door already closed, loosening his tie. He was staring at the glowing blue lines of a stock ticker on his monitor, a glass of dark whiskey already in hand. Marcus. My voice sounded small in the high-ceilinged room. I made dinner. I thought we could celebrate. Can't. Grabbed something with the partners, he said, his back still to me. The glow of the monitor cast sharp shadows across his desk. I stepped into the room, holding the small award. My reflection in the dark window looked pale, foolish. Well, I wanted to show you. I won. The City Design Award. He sighed. It was a sound of profound irritation, as if I had interrupted him during a critical calculation. He swiveled in his leather chair, but his eyes remained fixed on his phone, thumbs moving rapidly. Eliza. Listen. He held up a hand to stop me. I had not even started speaking. I just closed the Series B. $95 million. He finally looked up, but his gaze was not for me. It was for the room, for the life he was building, the life I was apparently just decorating. That, Eliza, is a real win. I swallowed. The small piece of acrylic felt suddenly cheap. That's incredible news. Marcus, truly. I just thought, this is important for my career. He stood up then, walking to the window, looking out over the lights of Austin that he felt he owned. Eliza, I need you to understand this. Your job is cute. He said the word like it was something sticky he wanted to wipe off his shoe. It's nice, but it is average. I am building an empire. You are picking paint colors. Average. The word landed in the quiet room and shattered everything. It echoed off the stark white walls I had chosen, the expensive furniture I had sourced. This was the man I had supported when he was just an idea, the man who used my personal savings, $22,000, to register his first LLC and keep the lights on. That money, my inheritance from my grandmother, was now invisible. I was invisible. He was not finished. He turned from the window, his expression cold and final. I am tired of carrying you at social events. I am tired of having to explain what you do, making it sound more important than it is. From now on, I need space. He adjusted his cuffs. I will decide when we should spend time together. I need focus. I cannot be distracted. I waited for the familiar sting of tears. I waited for the reflexive urge to apologize, to placate him, to make myself smaller just to keep the peace. It never came. Instead, I felt a deep, profound stillness. It was a terrible, cold silence that settled into my bones. It was not sadness. It was clarity. I saw the last 12 years of my life laid out like an autopsy. Every dinner party I hosted for his benefit, every vacation I canceled, every dream I deferred. The love I felt was not just dead. It was a fabrication, a long con I had played on myself, a decision formed in that icy calm. It was not emotional. It was absolute. I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. The man I thought I knew was gone. In his place was a stranger I had funded. I nodded once, slowly. My voice, when it came out, was steady. I understand. Space. You will have it. I woke up at 5 a.m. The alarm was unnecessary. The cold clarity from the night before had not faded. It had solidified. I moved through the dark house with a new purpose. The Keurig machine remained off. The stainless steel carafe stayed empty. The faint aroma of dark roast that usually filled the kitchen by 5:30 a.m. was absent. I went to the laundry room. Marcus's favorite navy suit, the one he needed for his Tuesday meetings, hung limp on the valet stand. I looked at the steamer, cold and unplugged in the corner. Then I walked past it. I showered, dressed in my own work clothes, and sat in the living room as the sun began to tint the sky. I was reading a dense textbook on biophilic architecture when I heard him stumble out of the bedroom, nearly an hour later than usual. I heard the frantic opening and closing of cabinets, the frustrated sigh. "Eliza," he called out, his voice thick with sleep and irritation. "Where is the coffee? Did you forget to make it?" I turned a page. The book was fascinating, discussing how structural supports could mimic forest canopies. I did not look up. "No, I did not forget," I said, my voice even. He appeared in the doorway of the living room, his hair disheveled, his expensive silk robe untied. He looked confused, like a man who had woken up in a house that was suddenly unfamiliar. "What does that mean I have a meeting in an hour?" I finally lifted my eyes from the page. I looked at him directly, without the filter of affection or duty. I saw only a man who was late. I assumed you would prefer to make it yourself. I would not want my average attempt to disappoint you. The blood drained from his face, replaced by a dull, rising red of anger. He stared at me, waiting for me to break, to apologize, to laugh it off as a joke. I simply held his gaze. He sputtered, "Fine," and stormed back into the kitchen. I heard the aggressive clatter of him trying to figure out the machine he had never touched. The new strategy was simple. It was not a strategy of action, but of absence. I was creating a vacuum, a precise, Eliza-shaped hole in his universe. I stopped managing his calendar. For 10 years, my brain had served as his auxiliary hard drive. I tracked his dinners, his investors, their wives' names, their children's birthdays, their dietary restrictions. That Wednesday, he had an 8 p.m. dinner at Uchi with the partners from the new Series B fund. I knew this. I had known it for 6 weeks. At 7:30 p.m., he was still in his study, yelling into his headset about projections. At 7:45, I put on my coat and left for the library. I returned home just after 10. The house was electric with his rage. He was pacing the kitchen, his suit jacket thrown onto the counter. "Where were you?" he demanded. "Do you know what happened tonight? I missed it. I missed the dinner." "Why did you not remind me?" I slipped off my shoes. "Remind you, you are the one building the empire. Marcus, I am just the one who picks the paint. I assumed you had your own systems in place." "My system was you," he yelled. "That seems like a poor business decision," I replied calmly, and walked upstairs to the guest room, locking the door behind me. The house began to reflect his internal state. Without my constant, invisible maintenance, entropy set in. The sleek, minimalist space we lived in required daily effort he had never seen. Dust gathered on the black granite. The exotic plants I had curated began to droop, their leaves turning brown because he never thought to water them. The refrigerator, once stocked with organic produce for the complex meals he demanded for entertaining, was now a graveyard of takeout boxes and expired almond milk. I cooked only for myself. Simple, healthy meals. I ate them at the small breakfast nook, reading my books. He lived on deliveries, the smell of grease and cardboard clinging to the air. My free time became my own. I stopped networking on his behalf. I stopped planning parties I hated. Every evening, every weekend, I was at the University of Texas Architecture Library. I was not just reading. I was working. My secret passion, sustainable design, was something Marcus had always dismissed as hippie nonsense. At Oak and Hearth, my style was muted, safe, marketable. It was average. In my private time, I was designing buildings that breathed, structures integrated with living landscapes, powered by the sun, cooled by the earth. It was audacious, brilliant work. I knew it. I bought a new laptop with my own money. I built an entirely new portfolio, one that contained none of my paid average work. It held only these new concepts, rendered in stunning, precise detail. It was the portfolio of a different person. It was the portfolio of me. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, an email arrived in my work inbox. It was not addressed to Oak and Hearth. It was addressed to me, personally. The sender's address was a string of random numbers and letters. The subject line read only "private consultation." The message was brief. It said they had been following my theoretical work online. They were impressed by a monograph I had written 5 years ago on zero-impact construction. They requested a design consultation for a private, high-security residential project in the hill country outside Austin. The email was anonymous. It was intriguing, and it was the first tremor of the new life I was building, right beneath the foundations of the old one. I told Marcus my Aunt Clara was ill. It was a simple, believable lie. He barely registered it, just grunted something about hospital parking being expensive and asked if I had seen his blue cufflinks. The lie was not for him. It was for me. It was the first brick in the wall I was building. I took 3 personal days from Oak and Hearth Interiors. They were understanding. I was their most reliable, if least ambitious, employee. The instructions in the anonymous email were precise. I followed them, driving my modest sedan an hour west of Austin, deep into the hill country. The smooth asphalt gave way to a rough, unmarked gravel road. After 2 miles, I reached a 12-foot-high security gate with no keypad, just a discreet camera. I stopped, and the gates swung open silently. I drove for another 15 minutes, winding through a pristine landscape of live oaks and limestone outcroppings. There was no house. There was nothing. Just land. Finally, I reached a clearing where a single, severe-looking man stood next to a black Range Rover. He was tall, thin, and wore a simple gray t-shirt that I knew cost more than my monthly salary. This was Julian Thorne. I knew his name. Everyone in tech knew his name. He was a genuine recluse, a phantom CEO who had built a multi-billion-dollar software empire and then vanished from public life 10 years ago. Marcus worshipped him. He quoted Thorne's early manifestos like scripture. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. "You're late," Thorne said. His voice was flat. The email said 10 a.m., I replied, checking my watch. It was 9:58. He almost smiled. "Close enough. Show me." There was no table, no office. We stood on the crest of a hill overlooking a vast, untouched valley. I unrolled my concept sketches on the hood of his car, the wind catching the corners. "You want an invisible house," I said. It was not a question. "I want the landscape to win," he corrected. "I want to live inside that hill, not on top of it. I want to see the stars without any glass between us. I want the house to breathe, to regulate its own temperature. I want it to disappear." He looked at me, his eyes sharp. "The last architect I hired, from a firm in Copenhagen, wanted to build a white concrete box here. He said it would be a statement, I fired him before he finished his sentence. I pointed to my sketches. No box. I said, "You build with the hill. You use the excavated limestone for the structural walls. You use geothermal cooling. The roof is a living meadow, irrigated by recycled gray water. From the air, it looks like a slight swell in the earth. From the valley, it is invisible. The entire south-facing wall is a retractable glass system that slides away into the rock, turning the living room into a cave that opens to the world." I showed him my research on biophilic design, the blog posts he had somehow found. I spoke for 20 minutes straight, the passion I had suppressed for a decade pouring out of me. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I did not care. When I finished, he was silent. He just stared at the sketches. I had either just secured the project of a lifetime, or I was about to be dismissed like all the others. "When can you start?" he asked. A new life began. It ran in a parallel channel to the old one. By day, I was Eliza, the average designer at Oak and Hearth. I specified beige carpets and inoffensive light fixtures for suburban dentists' offices. I nodded politely in meetings. I went home to the hollow, silent house. But at night, I was the architect. After Marcus fell asleep, drunk on his own success, or just plain drunk, I would go to the guest room, my room now, and work until 3 a.m. My new laptop glowed, filled with blueprints, material analyses, and complex engineering solutions. On weekends, I used the sick aunt excuse again. I was on site at the Thorne property, coordinating with geologists and structural engineers I had sourced, all of us bound by ironclad non-disclosure agreements. Julian Thorne was a demanding, brilliant, and deeply impatient client. He challenged every choice. He pushed back. It was the most alive I had ever felt. But as my new world was being built, I had to dismantle the old one. I needed leverage. I called Chloe. She is my oldest friend, the kind who knew me before Marcus. She is a senior editor at a major lifestyle magazine, a woman who navigates the social and financial currents of Austin with surgical precision. We met for coffee. I told her everything. The average comment, the $95 million deal, the cold silence, the separate bedroom. Chloe listened, her expression hardening. "Eliza," she said, "the man you married is gone. This new one is a liability. You used your inheritance to start his company. You need to know what that's worth." "He says it was just seed money, that it's long gone," I said. "He's lying," she said flatly. "VC guys like Marcus, especially the ones who think they're the next Julian Thorne, they don't just build empires, they build shields, they hide assets." Say, Chloe said she knew someone, a forensic accountant who owed her a favor. "Give me 48 hours, she said. "Let's see how average your portfolio really is." The call came 2 days later. I was at Oak and Hearth, staring at a swatch of particularly depressing gray fabric. My phone vibrated. I stepped outside. "Eliza." Chloe's voice was tight, furious. "He's not just hiding assets. He's moving them, actively." "What do you mean?" "I mean, in the last 30 days, since he closed that Series B, he has been systematically liquidating assets from your joint investment accounts. Stocks, bonds, things you owned together. He's moving the cash." "Where?" I asked, my blood turning cold. "Into a series of new, high-risk, high-yield private equity funds, and, Eliza, your name isn't on any of them." Chloe's discovery did not make me panic. It focused me. Marcus was actively stealing from our shared future, betting it on high-risk ventures while I was relegated to picking paint colors. He was so convinced of his own brilliance and my average nature that he never imagined I would look. He assumed I was too simple to understand the statements, too timid to question him. My mediocrity was not a cage. It was my camouflage. An average woman would cry or scream. An average woman would demand answers and give him the warning he needed to cover his tracks. I would do none of those things. The next morning, I drove to a bank in a different county, one where we had no history. I used my maiden name, Eliza Vance. It felt good to see that name on a document. Eliza Vance was not average. She was just dormant. I opened a new business checking account. I filed the paperwork online, creating Vance Designs LLC. I was no longer just Eliza. I was a corporation of one. I took the next logical step. Chloe had given me a name. Not an Austin lawyer who might play golf with Marcus, but someone from Dallas. She eats tech bros for breakfast, Chloe had warned, with genuine admiration. Her name was Mrs. Davenport. I took an afternoon off another Aunt Clara check-in and drove the 3 hours north. Her office was on the 40th floor of a glass tower, all steel and polished marble. Mrs. Davenport was in her late 60s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. She did not offer coffee. She offered a legal pad. "Speak," she said. I laid it all out. The average comment. The $95 million deal. The $22,000 of my inheritance that served as his first seed money. And finally, Chloe's discovery the illicit transfers of community property to high-risk funds, all solely in his name. She listened, her face impassive. When I finished, she steepled her fingers. Mr. Marcus, in his arrogance, has just committed what we in the legal field call constructive fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. He thinks he is a wolf, but he has the legal instincts of a sheep. A thin, cold smile touched her lips. He is not building an empire, Ms. Vance. He is building your case. She accepted my retainer. Her instructions were precise. Go home, be average, be the boring, predictable wife he thinks you are. Do not change your patterns, but document everything. Get me statements. Get me access to the joint investment portal. I want a complete map of every dollar he has moved, where it went, and when. I drove back to Austin feeling like I had just armed a weapon. My work on the Thorn project was accelerating, filling my nights with purpose. But the legal battle, the waiting, the sheer toxicity of living under the same roof as Marcus, it was a different kind of poison. I needed an outlet. I needed something physical, something that was not about quiet calculations. I found a community art workshop in East Austin, in an old warehouse that smelled of ozone and hot metal. I signed up for a metal sculpture class. The instructor was a man named Sal. He must have been 70, with forearms like steel cables and a face mapped with wrinkles. He looked at my soft hands and clean clothes with mild disdain. "You here to make pretty birds?" he grunted. "I am here to learn how to weld," I said. He taught me. He taught me how to cut, how to bend, how to force a new shape from discarded material. It was loud. It was dangerous. It was magnificent. Sal taught me how to turn scrap into art, a perfect metaphor for what I was doing with my life. "You don't fight the metal," he would say, his voice rough over the roar of the forge. "You find its weakness, you heat it, and you show it where to go." As I grew stronger, Marcus grew weaker. The vacuum I had created was collapsing in on him. His space was not the freedom he imagined. It was an abyss. The house was a disaster. His appointments were missed. His carefully constructed life was failing because the invisible scaffolding me had been removed. He began to call. At first, just once or twice a day. "Where are the tax documents? Did you pay the gardener?" I did not answer. Then the texts started. "Eliza, this is ridiculous. Pick up. We need to talk. This isn't funny. I'm at the fundraiser. Where are you? You are embarrassing me." The calls escalated, 5 times an hour. 10. Angry, panicked voicemails. I was at the Thorn property, standing on the newly laid foundation, discussing the geothermal piping with an engineer. My phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket. I ignored it. I was at the workshop, the roar of the grinders drowning out all other sound. My phone lit up, again and again. Marcus, Marcus, Marcus. I let it buzz. I was following his rule. After all, he was the one who needed space. He was the one who would decide when we spent time together, He had not decided yet, and I was not average enough to remind him. The breaking point came at the annual Austin Technology Gala. It was the premier social event of the season, a place Marcus had always insisted on performing. I, of course, was not there. I was at Sal's workshop, perfecting a weld on a steel sculpture. My phone buzzed on the workbench. It was Chloe. I pulled off my heavy gloves and answered. "You are not going to believe this," Chloe said, her voice electric over the sound of the party. "Your husband just imploded," she explained. Marcus had arrived late, looking like he had slept in his car. His suit was a mess of wrinkles. He was alone, and clearly flustered. He had cornered Robert Jennings, the head of the Series B investment fund, and tried to engage him. "And then," Chloe whispered, "he called Robert's wife Sarah. Her name is Catherine. I have been to 3 dinners with them. Eliza, you know this. He called her the wrong name. Twice." I could picture it perfectly. The tight, polite smile on Catherine's face. The immediate cooling of Robert Jennings's eyes. In their world, such a mistake was not a gaffe. It was an indicator of instability. It showed he was not focused. It showed he was sloppy. "He is losing it," Chloe said. "He looks terrified." "Good," I said, and hung up. The invisible support system was gone, and he was in free fall. His panic had a new, sharp edge. His silence was no longer compliance. It was a terrifying, empty void. He had built his empire on my foundation, and now that I had stepped away, the entire structure was shaking. I knew he would try to find me. I had been varying my schedule, but I knew he was tracking my car, or my phone. It was predictable. I was at the workshop 2 days later. It was a Saturday. I was wearing heavy-duty overalls. My face was streaked with soot, and I was holding an active welding torch, its blue-white flame hissing in the dark. I was heating a piece of rebar, preparing to bend it. The air was filled with the smell of hot metal and ozone, the sound of grinders and hammers. The rolling metal door of the warehouse screeched open, flooding the space with harsh afternoon light. Marcus stood there, silhouetted. He was still in his Friday suit, though it was now Saturday evening. He looked wrecked. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot. In his hand, he held a bouquet of roses. They were hopelessly wilted, their heads drooping, the cellophane wrapper crinkling in his fist. "Eliza," he shouted over the noise. Sal looked up from his anvil, annoyed at the interruption. I just lifted my welding mask, letting it rest on my forehead. I did not turn off the torch. I just held it, its flame burning steadily. "Marcus," I said. My voice was calm. He stumbled into the workshop, his expensive shoes crunching on the metal shavings. He looked around at the raw, industrial space with utter disgust, as if he had just stepped in something. "What is this place? What are you doing? You reek of metal." He stopped a few feet away from me. The heat from the torch kept him at bay. "I have been calling you for 3 days," he said, his voice cracking. "Why are you not answering my calls? You embarrassed me at the gala. You are sabotaging me." "I am welding," I said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He threw the dead flowers onto a workbench. They landed with a sad, dry rattle. "We need to talk. Now. This space thing has gone on long enough. It stops." "Does it?" I asked. I kept the torch aimed at the rebar, which was now beginning to glow a dull cherry red. He saw he was getting nowhere. He changed tactics. The anger collapsed into a practiced, desperate performance of remorse. "Eliza, look." "I am sorry." "Okay, I am sorry." He ran his hands through his hair. "This Series B, it's immense pressure. You have no idea. I am managing $95 million of other people's money. I am building something. I said things I did not mean. It was the stress talking." I finally turned the torch off. The sudden silence in our corner of the workshop was heavier than the noise. I set the torch down on its stand. "No," Marcus, I said, pulling off my mask. I looked him dead in the eyes. You meant every word. You were precise. You said my work was average. You said you were carrying me. You said you needed space. You said you would decide when we communicated. I wiped a smear of grease from my cheek with the back of my glove. I am just respecting your boundaries. His face contorted. He could not process this version of me. The calm, soot-covered woman holding power tools was not the wife he had filed away as average. I want you to come home, he ordered. I am busy, I said. I have my own work. What work? He scoffed, his frustration returning. Choosing curtains, picking cute paint colors. Eliza, this is the real world. This hobby is over. You are right, I said. It is not a hobby. I turned and walked to the large table in the center of Sal's workspace. On it sat a model. It was the one I was building for the final presentation to Julian Thorne. It was not a dollhouse. It was a masterpiece of architectural engineering, a 1/50th scale model of the invisible house, built to precise specifications. It showed the complex geothermal systems, the retractable glass walls, the layered living roof, the way the structure integrated perfectly into the limestone hill. It was intricate, brilliant, and breathtaking. Marcus had followed me. He stopped dead when he saw it. His eyes, which had been filled with rage, now widened in complete, stunned disbelief. He was a VC. He did not know design, but he knew ambition. He knew the scale of genius when he saw it. He slowly walked around the table, his hand hovering over the model, afraid to touch it. What is this? He whispered. My project, I said, picking up a small tool to adjust a support beam. My average project. He looked from the model to me and back again. The confusion on his face was the most satisfying thing I had seen in 10 years. He could not reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the mind that had created this. He just stood there, speechless. The first crack in his empire had nothing to do with money. It was the realization that he had never known me at all. The confrontation at the workshop left Marcus shaken, but not broken. He retreated, confused, and I went back to work. I had the complete financial map for Mrs. Davenport. I had the Thorne project, which was now moving from excavation to foundation. I was operating at peak efficiency. The next move did not come from me. It came from his own camp. My phone rang on a Monday morning. I was at Oak and Hearth, reviewing a carpet sample order. The caller ID read Ben Carter. Ben was Marcus's co-founder, his business partner, his work wife, as they joked at parties. He was the logistical brain to Marcus's salesmanship. I had always found Ben to be quiet, observant, and fundamentally weak. I stepped into the hallway. Ben. Eliza, thank God. He sounded terrible, exhausted. Eliza, I need to see you. Can you meet me? Please. It is about Marcus. I am at work. Ben. I am in the parking lot, he said. A cold dread settled on me. This was not a social call. This was damage control. I went downstairs. He was sitting in his silver Tesla, the engine silently humming. I got into the passenger seat. The car was immaculate, but Ben was a mess. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had not shaved. He is out of control, Eliza, Ben said immediately, his hands twisting in his lap. He is missing meetings. He is yelling at the engineers. He was incoherent at the gala. Robert Jennings called me personally. He is concerned. The investors are concerned. I said nothing. I just waited. This was not about my well-being. Ben took a deep breath. Look, I know you two are having issues. He told me. He said you are going through something. Did he? But this is affecting the company, Ben pleaded. This is affecting my money. Our money. He is supposed to be the face of this. He is supposed to be stable. And he is not. He is erratic. He is obsessed. He keeps talking about some model you built. He sounds unhinged. What do you want from me? Ben. He looked away, out the windshield. He was struggling. Eliza, I should not be saying this. He is my best friend, but, damn it, I have to protect the company. He turned back to me, his eyes filled with a desperate, selfish honesty. He told me 6 months ago, before the Series B even closed. He told me that he was planning on an upgrade after the company went public. I felt the air leave my lungs. An upgrade. His word, Ben said, visibly uncomfortable. He said he was building an empire, and he needed an empress, not a decorator. He said you were legacy weight, average, upgrade, the vocabulary of his world. I was not a wife. I was a piece of outdated software. He is seeing someone, Ben rushed on, as if ripping off a bandage. A PR director, young, from the firm we hired to handle the Series B press. I think her name is Jessica. He has been indiscreet. So, there it was. The cheap, predictable, pathetic truth. It was not just dismissal. It was replacement. My average status was not just an insult. It was a formal justification for his betrayal. Ben, seeing my lack of an emotional breakdown, mistook my cold fury for shock. He leaned in, trying to be the good guy. Eliza, I am so sorry. You do not deserve this. But the timing. Eliza, the timing is terrible. We are in the quiet period before the next valuation. If he is seen in public with this, Jessica, or if you file for a messy divorce, it could shatter investor confidence. It could kill the IPO. It could wipe us all out. He finally got to the point. I need him focused, Ben said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Can you just handle this quietly? Keep him calm. Reassure him. Just until we get through the next quarter. Just, please, can you solve this? This chaos is scaring the investors. I looked at this weak, terrified man. He was not my friend. He was not Marcus's friend. He was a man protecting his stock options. He had just handed me the intimate, devastating details of my husband's betrayal, not to help me, but to use me. He wanted me to gently manage my own replacement to protect his bottom line. He wanted me to be the average wife one last time, to quietly absorb the humiliation for the good of the company. My decision, which had been cold, now became steel. My resolve, which had been firm, was now forged. I gave him a small, sad smile, the smile he expected from the woman he thought I was. Ben, I said, my voice soft, thank you for being so honest with me. It must have been very difficult for you. Relief washed over his face. He thought he had manipulated me. He thought I would play along. It was, he said, nodding seriously. But it was the right thing to do. It was, I agreed. I opened the car door. I understand the situation perfectly now. You have given me a lot to think about. So you will talk to him. You will smooth things over, he asked, desperate for assurance. I will handle it, I said. You have my word. I closed the door and walked back into Oak and Hearth Interiors, leaving him in his silent, expensive car. I took the elevator up to my average office. I sat at my desk, ignoring the gray carpet samples. I took out my phone. I did not call Marcus. I called Mrs. Davenport. Hello, I said. The situation has changed. They are not just hiding assets. They are committing active adultery. We have a witness. I gave her Ben's name. I am done waiting for the next quarter. Activate everything. Mrs. Davenport's voice was like ice. Are you certain, Ms. Vance? Activating this is final. There is no reconciliation from this. I am standing in my average office. Mrs. Davenport, I said, looking at the gray carpet. He called me legacy weight. He is liquidating our future to fund an upgrade. Activate it all. Burn it to the ground. Very well, she said. The line clicked shut. The next day, Marcus was presiding over his most important board meeting since the Series B. He was at the head of a 20-foot-long mahogany table, surrounded by his investors. Ben Carter sat to his right, Robert Jennings to his left. He was, I am sure, projecting confidence, using his empire builder voice. At 10:15 a.m., the door to the conference room opened, not by a staffer, but by a man in a nondescript suit holding a legal-sized envelope. "Marcus," the man asked. Marcus, annoyed by the interruption, nodded curtly. "We are in a meeting." "This will only take a moment, sir," the man said. He walked directly to Marcus, placed the thick envelope on the table directly in front of him, and said clearly, "You have been served." He did not whisper. He did not apologize. He simply stated the fact, turned, and walked out. I was told later, by a source Chloe had, that the silence was absolute. Robert Jennings looked at Ben. Ben looked at the envelope as if it were a snake. Marcus, his face pale, stared at the return address, Davenport and Associates, Dallas. In that same moment, across the state, Mrs. Davenport was filing a temporary restraining order and an emergency injunction to freeze assets. The documents, meticulously prepared over the last 2 weeks, cited constructive fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and illicit transfer of community property. Every account number I had found, every high-risk fund he had funneled our money into, was listed. A judge signed the order by 11 a.m. By the time Marcus ripped open the envelope and saw the divorce filing, his empire was already in lockdown. He tried to call me. I was not there to hear it, but I can imagine his frantic stabbing motions at the phone. He would have gotten the automated recording. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service." He would have tried my work. The receptionist at Oak and Hearth would have told him, "I am sorry, Mr. Marcus. Eliza is no longer an employee here. She resigned this morning." He fled the meeting. He left his investors sitting at the table in stunned silence. He drove home, no doubt breaking every speed limit. He would have run to the front door, jamming his key into the lock. It would not have turned. He would have tried again, jiggling it, pushing. Then he would have seen it. The lock was new, a high-security, unpickable deadbolt. He would have hammered on the door. He would have shouted my name. The house was silent. Eventually, he would have tried the garage code. It, too, had been changed, but the pedestrian door to the garage was unlocked. I had Mrs. Davenport hire a moving crew. They were efficient. They had packed only his things, his $200 running shoes, his collection of whiskeys, his bespoke suits, now folded carelessly into cardboard boxes, his golf clubs, his Peloton. Everything was stacked neatly against the wall. On top of the central box, a single white envelope was taped. Inside, he found the signed copy of the temporary restraining order, legally barring him from coming within 100 yards of me, our home, or my new place of business. He was, in effect, homeless. While his world was shrinking to the contents of a rented garage, mine was expanding. I was 90 minutes away, standing on the raw earth of the Thorne property. The air was clean. The sound was not of shouting, but of industry. A massive crane was lowering the final piece of glass into place. It was a single pane, 40 feet long and 12 feet high, a seamless wall between the interior living space and the valley below. It was an engineering marvel. I stood beside Julian Thorne, both of us in hard hats, watching as the installation crew, flown in from Germany, meticulously sealed the panel. Julian had been quiet for an hour, just observing. He watched the crane. He watched the crew. But mostly, he watched me as I conferred with the site manager, checking the pressure seals, confirming the alignment down to the millimeter. "You have done it, Eliza," he said finally, his voice low. "We are not done yet. Julian, the living roof is next." "You have done it," he repeated, ignoring me. "I wanted a house that would disappear. You are the only one who understood. You did not build a statement. You built a whisper." He looked out at the valley. the new glass perfectly reflecting the sky. I have never allowed my homes to be photographed. I detest the press. I detest the attention. I held my breath. I knew what was coming. This, he said, gesturing to the house, to the land, is different. This is not a house. It is a thesis. It deserves to be seen. The world is full of average architects building loud, concrete boxes. They need to see this. He pulled out his phone. It was a simple, old-school flip phone. He typed a number. "Get me Anna Wintour," he said into the phone. He was joking. Sort of. He paused. "Michael, it is Thorne. Yes, it has been a while. Listen, I have something for you. No one else. The exclusive. It is a house. But that is not the story. The story is the architect. Yes, her name is Eliza Vance. Vance. You will want to send your best photographer. And Michael, this is the cover." He snapped the phone shut and looked at me. "I assume you have heard of modern American spaces." The Austin venture capital community is small, insular, and built entirely on perception. The news of Marcus being served papers in the middle of a board meeting, followed by an emergency freeze on his assets, was not a ripple. It was a depth charge. It spread instantly. By lunchtime, every VC on Congress Avenue knew. By dinner, they knew the name of the judge who signed the injunction. They did not see a man wronged. They saw a man who had been outmaneuvered. They saw instability. Robert Jennings, the man whose wife Marcus had insulted, called an emergency meeting of the Series B investors. I was not there, but Chloe had a source. The concern was not for Marcus's marriage. The concern was for the $95 million. "This demonstrates a severe risk in judgment," Jennings reportedly said. "If he was this reckless and deceptive with his own partner, how can we trust his judgment with our capital? What else is he hiding? Ben Carter, desperate to save the company and himself, had apparently thrown Marcus under the bus, confirming that Marcus's personal distractions were affecting the business. The man Marcus called his best friend was now his primary executioner. The immediate effect was financial. The injunction froze not only our joint accounts but also the assets he had illicitly moved. This included his personal liquidity. The man who bragged about building an empire suddenly could not pay his American Express bill. To fund his new high-priced legal team, because he certainly could not use Mrs. Davenport's level of counsel from Dallas, he was forced to do the one thing a VC never does: sell his own preferred stock prematurely. He had to liquidate a block of his founder's shares at a deep, humiliating discount just to get cash for his lawyer's retainer. He was cannibalizing his own empire before it was even built. This desperation drove his next, pathetic move. He turned to the only weapon he had left public opinion. He started a smear campaign. He could not serve me with papers, as I was legally invisible, but he could serve me to the social media masses. He posted a long, sanctimonious message about his heartbreak. He painted a picture of a loyal husband blindsided by an unstable, grasping wife. He implied I was a gold digger, that my average career had not been enough, and that I was trying to steal the company he had built. He used words like erratic behavior and mental instability. He was trying to build a narrative where he was the victim of my ambition. I was furious. I wanted to respond, to post the bank statements, to scream. I called Chloe, my voice shaking with rage. "He is calling me crazy. He is calling me a thief." Chloe laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "Oh, Eliza, put your phone down. Amateurs react. Professionals anticipate. He just walked right into the trap." "What trap?" "He has established a public narrative of his victimhood. Now, we just provide the context." 2 hours later, an anonymous email was sent to a select list of Austin's most influential tech bloggers and gossip columnists. It contained no commentary. It was just a forwarded email chain. The chain was between Marcus and Ben Carter, dated 6 months prior. It was their discussion about the post-IPO future. It contained Ben's concerns about optics and Marcus's now infamous reply, "She's legacy weight. We go public. I'm getting an upgrade." I need an empress, not a decorator. By 9 p.m., the narrative had not just flipped, it had been eviscerated. Marcus was no longer the heartbroken victim. He was the arrogant, cheating husband who had been caught. The upgrade email went viral in our circle. He was not just a defendant in a divorce, he was a meme. He was a cautionary tale. He looked like what he was, a self-important fool who had been sloppy. The sympathy for him vanished. The respect for me, the quiet, average wife, began to grow. While his world was on fire, mine was silent, focused, and bathed in the perfect afternoon light. The team from Modern American Spaces had arrived at the Thorne property. Michael, the editor-in-chief, was there himself, along with a world-renowned photographer and a crew of assistants. Julian, true to his word, was not present. He had left me the keys. "It is your house as much as mine," he had said. For 8 hours, we worked. I was not the subject. I was the collaborator. I walked the photographer through my design. I explained how the light would move at dusk. I showed him how the living roof was designed to attract specific native pollinators. I spoke about the geothermal exchange, not as a feature, but as a philosophy. The photographer was captivated, but Michael, the editor, was watching me. We sat on the limestone terrace as the sun began to set. The entire glass wall retracted, the warm breeze blowing through the house. "Julian said the story was you," Michael said, holding a recorder. I thought he was being dramatic. He is rarely dramatic. "The story is the house," I said. "It is about integration. It is about how we can live in nature without destroying it." "No," Michael said, shaking his head. "I have seen houses like this, Eliza. Expensive, beautiful boxes. But this, you talk about it like it is alive. You did not just design it, you solved it. I have been reading your old blog, your theoretical work. You have been working on this for 10 years, before anyone was paying attention." He looked at me, his gaze intense. "The house is the setting. The story is the architect. A woman who, frankly, no one in our world has ever heard of, just created the most important piece of residential architecture in the last 20 years, while all the men were building loud, average boxes." He clicked off his recorder. "This is not just a feature, Eliza. This is the cover. The house is the background. You are the foreground. We are telling the story of the mind that built this, the rebirth of American design. That is the story." He smiled. "I hope you are comfortable with your picture being seen everywhere, because you are about to stop being average." My new office was small, just 3 rooms in a clean, modern building downtown. It was under Vance Designs, LLC. It was not hard to find, but it was not public. It took him 2 weeks, 2 weeks of his world collapsing, to finally track it down. I was at my new drafting table, reviewing the plans for a small boutique hotel that had hired me, sight unseen, after Michael from Modern American Spaces had made a quiet call on my behalf. The work was flowing in. The room was bright, filled with afternoon light, and smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The door to my office flew open, crashing against the wall. Marcus stood there. He was a ruin. The man I had known, who was always impeccably tailored, was gone. He looked gaunt. His suit was wrinkled and stained, and his eyes were wild with a toxic cocktail of sleeplessness, alcohol, and pure, undiluted rage. He was a cornered animal. "Eliza," he roared. My new assistant, a young, bright woman named Sarah, jumped up from her desk. "Sir, you cannot just—" "Get out!" Marcus screamed at her, and she flinched, retreating into the hallway. He stormed toward my desk. "You have to stop this," he hissed, slamming his hands down on my blueprints. I did not move. I just looked at his hands, then up at his face. I kept my voice perfectly level. Stop what? Marcus, I am reviewing a floor plan. You know what? He shouted, his voice cracking. He was losing control. The injunction, the lawyers, this character assassination. You are destroying me. You are destroying the company. He leaned in, his face inches from mine, his breath sour. Who do you think you are? You cannot do this. You are a decorator. You are an average, small-time designer. You are nothing without me. There it was. The word. The one that started it all. He had returned to it, his ultimate weapon, the one he thought would make me small again. I leaned back in my chair, calm, and looked at him, not with anger, but with something like pity. You are right, Marcus, I said quietly. He recoiled, confused. It was not the reaction he expected. I am an average designer, I continued, my voice clear and precise in the sunlit room. An average designer who just completed the Thorne house. His confusion deepened. What? The Julian Thorne estate, I clarified. I was the chief architect, an average designer who is about to be on the cover of Modern American Spaces next month. The issue is called The Rebirth of American Design. He froze. Absolutely, completely froze. The name Julian Thorne was a god's name in his world. It was the name he used to impress investors, the name he dropped at parties. The idea that I, average Eliza, had not only met Thorne but built his legendary secret home was a concept his brain could not process. The rage evaporated, replaced by a sick, pale shock. You're lying, he stammered. That's not possible. Is it? I asked. He stared at me, the wheels turning, finally connecting my model at Sal's workshop to the most mythical project in the tech world. He saw the truth, and in that moment, he broke. The last of his anger, his arrogance, his entire facade crumbled. He physically staggered back and slumped against the wall, sliding down into a sitting position, his head in his hands. Eliza, please, he whispered, his voice muffled. Please, I did not know. I did not understand. He looked up, his eyes now wet with desperate, pathetic tears. This was his final tactic, begging. I will stop. I will give you anything. Split the company. 70-30. Your favor. Just call off the lawyers. Stop the injunction. We can undo this. I was wrong. I was an idiot. I admit it. I admit everything. He tried to stand, to come toward me again. I held up a hand. Sit down. Marcus. He obeyed. I shook my head slowly. You still do not get it. Do you? You think this is about the money. You think I am doing this for a bigger percentage of the company you built with my $22,000. I stood up, not in anger, but in finality. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. This was never about the money. It was about the fact that you dismissed me. You called me average. You called me legacy weight. You tried to upgrade me. You stood in our house and told me I was a person who just picks paint colors while you build empires. I turned back to him. He was just a small, broken man on my new office floor. Well, I am finished picking your colors. Marcus, I am building my own empire now. He started to sob, a dry, ugly sound. I am ruined. Eliza, I am ruined. You are, I agreed, and you did it all yourself. I walked to my desk and picked up a small memo slip. Oh, I said, as if I had just remembered something. Mrs. Davenport called this morning. She sends a message. He looked up, a tiny, desperate flicker of hope in his eyes, as if my lawyer might be offering a truce. She said to tell you she finally located that prenuptial agreement, I said, my voice casual. The one you had me sign a week before the wedding. The one you flew to the Cayman Islands to secure in a safe deposit box because you said it protected both of us. His face went ashen. She said it is a fascinating document. I continued. Apparently, the clause about waiving all rights to your future earnings. It has a massive legal loophole. The way it was drafted. It seems it is not enforceable in the state of Texas if constructive fraud is proven. I let the words hang in the air. She also said that your upgrade email to Ben Carter and the illicit transfer of over $1 million in community property is more than enough proof. The prenup is worthless. Marcus. I tossed the memo slip into the trash. See you in court. The National Design Awards were in New York City. The ceremony was held in a cavernous, historic building, the kind with ceilings so high they seemed to collect shadows. I had flown in that morning. My new life was a series of firsts, but this felt different. This was not Austin. This was the center of the world. I knew Marcus was in the city. Chloe, ever my source, had confirmed he was attending a global tech summit at a hotel just 10 blocks away. It was his last-ditch effort to save his reputation, a desperate attempt to find new investors now that his Series B funding had been pulled, citing a crisis of leadership. He was on a stage trying to sell a failing empire. I was in an auditorium waiting to be handed an award for building a real one. My category was Designer of the Year. It was saved for last. I sat at a table with Michael, the editor from Modern American Spaces. When they began reading the nominees, my hands were steady. When they announced the winner, for the revolutionary Thorn House, Eliza Vance, the applause was deafening. I walked onto the stage. The light was so bright I could not see the audience. I held the award. It was heavy, solid, and cold. I had not prepared a speech. I just spoke. "Thank you," I said, my voice clear over the microphone. For a very long time, I was told that my work was quiet, that it was average. I was told that building empires was a loud business, and that what I did was just decoration. I paused, thinking of him, 10 blocks away, yelling into a microphone about projections and scalability. I have learned that the quietest work is often the most revolutionary. That being underestimated is a profound strategic advantage. This is for all the women who were told their work was average while they were quietly building the future. Thank you for seeing the power in finding your own voice. The applause followed me off the stage. The after-party was a blur. People whose work I had studied for 15 years were shaking my hand, complimenting my vision, asking about my LLC. At 1 a.m., Michael tapped my shoulder. "It is time, Eliza. The issue just hit the stands." We left the glittering party, stepping out into the cold, sharp New York night, and I saw it. On the corner, under the harsh fluorescent lights of a 24-hour newsstand, the manager was cutting the cords on the fresh bundles of Modern American Spaces. He placed the first stack right in the front window. The cover was me. It was not a small photo in the corner. It was the entire page. I was standing in the great room of the Thorn House. The massive glass wall slid away, the Texas sunset blazing behind me. I was not smiling. I looked strong. I looked like the architect of that house. And the title, in bold, white letters, Eliza Vance, The Rebirth of American Design. I was so focused on the cover, I did not see him at first. He was walking fast, shoulders slumped, his tie loosened. He was clearly coming from the tech summit, a man defeated. He walked right past the newsstand, then stopped, as if snagged by an invisible wire. He turned slowly. He saw the stack of magazines. He saw the cover. He saw my face, 10 feet tall, staring back at him. He saw the headline. He looked up from the magazine and saw me, standing on the sidewalk, not 20 feet away, holding the Designer of the Year award in my hand. The world shrank to the space between us. The sound of the city traffic, the people, it all faded. His face, which I had last seen contorted in rage, was now just empty. It was the face of a man who had not just lost, but who had been rendered completely irrelevant. He had been so busy building his empire that he had not noticed I had built a real one right next to him. He took one, shuffling step toward me. "Eliza." His voice was a dry rasp. A ghost. I looked at him. I did not feel rage. I did not feel pain. I did not feel pity. I felt nothing. The average woman he had created was gone. The woman standing there was Eliza Vance. I did not say a word. I just held his gaze for 1 second. Then I turned and walked to the black car waiting for me at the curb. I got in. The door closed with a solid, satisfying sound. As the car pulled away, I looked back. I saw him. Just a man alone on a dark sidewalk, left behind, bathed in the bright light of the magazine cover he would never, ever grace. Thank you for listening to this story. Please comment below and let us know where you are listening from, so we can connect and share our thoughts. Remember to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by many more people.